Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for tuning in here on Tuesday, January 21st. Promised y'all earlier we would be talking about some roster construction stuff, and obviously talked about the coaching search earlier. I still think it's going to be Liam Cohen and, in all likelihood, Robert Saleh, Jaguars head coach and defensive coordinator. That's my prediction. We'll see how it plays out. Been wrong before. We'll be wrong again. There's no question about that. But wanted to talk about kind of how to address this roster this offseason. And there's a lot of different ways the Jaguars could go about it. At this point, it still strongly feels like Trent Baalke is going to be the top decision maker from a personnel standpoint. And so when you look at that, how does that impact what he's going to do, what the Jaguars will do as a franchise? Not 100% sure, but this is a personnel guy who likes length, strength, athleticism, sometimes values those traits over like game tape, in my opinion. So that's something to keep in mind when you talk about free agency, when you talk about the draft. But I kind of want to take a look at what I think the Jaguars should do this offseason. We've been talking about mock drafts and free agency for a long time. And the more and more I look at it, the more I think of like the different value propositions the Jaguars could have. And like, okay, if we're going out and we're spending a lot of money on this position, which means we're not going to draft it highly in the draft, like what position offers more value from a signing a free agent standpoint to a drafting standpoint? And I don't think that there is a position in the league outside of quarterback that presents more value on a rookie contract than wide receiver. And the reason being is wide receiver is the second highest paid position in the sport. It is. You currently have 6 receivers that are making at least $30 million per year. Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson. What's the next highest paid position? There's not a single tackle making $30 million per year. Trent Williams is the closest. There is one edge rusher making $30 million per year in Nick Bosa. And no other position is close. One interior defensive lineman making $30 million per year. And so, cornerback, the highest paid corner is at 24. So I started thinking about like from a roster construction standpoint, salary cap. If you take a receiver in the first round and you hit on that receiver, there is no better value other than quarterback in the draft based on the contractual obligation of creating a roster that's as competitive as it possibly can be. If you're doing the most with your money, you're trying not to pay top-end wide receivers. Obviously, if you draft a guy, you want to re-sign him, right? Like Brian Thomas Jr., the Jaguars drafted, they're going to want to re-sign him down the road. But if you, instead of signing T. Higgins, instead of signing Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, whoever it may be, go draft a receiver in the first round. Because I think T. Higgins is going to be a $30 million guy too. It's just kind of the way free agency works. Instead of paying T. Higgins $30 million, you could go sign a starting caliber guard and a starting caliber safety for the same price and then go draft a wide receiver in the first round. Right? Like, that's kind of how I'm starting to look at this year. And of course, if there weren't wide receivers worth drafting, then you don't do it. You don't think of it that way. But there are wide receivers worth drafting. I know people talk about this as a down class. I don't see it that way. I think it's a good wide receiver class. I think it's going to play out that way. And I look at the top couple guys, top 3 guys. If you're sitting there at 5 or in a slight trade down, I think you can feel pretty good about it. And so that's kind of the direction I'm leaning when it comes to the Jaguars in 2025, what I think they should do. And beyond just the value proposition standpoint of it, you haven't done enough to support Trevor Lawrence throughout his career. You got to upgrade the offensive line pass protection. You got to upgrade the offensive coaching. You need to upgrade outside receiver. He's never had two high quality outside receivers in his career. Never. Brian Thomas Jr. is really the first one. I mean, the closest thing before that was Marvin Jones Jr. And Trent Baalke signed Gabe Davis, which that could be a roadblock to potentially really upgrading the wide receiver position this year. I don't think it should be, because that's falling into like the sunk cost fallacy or just doubling down on a bad decision. I don't think you should do either of those things, but you got to support this team, the infrastructure. There is the outside wide receiver position is severely lacking outside of Brian Thomas Jr. Bottom line, it just is. So I think the Jaguars should prioritize that, whether that's through free agency or the draft. And then when I break down what makes more sense, I think the draft makes more sense. So we're going to continue talking about that. First, though, got to remind you all about Underdog Fantasy. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward. Signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with promo code DuvalDaily, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. Maybe you're looking at one of these running backs in the championship round. Saquon, maybe. Maybe you think James Cook's going to score. Underdog has vulture protection to rescue your pick'em if your running back gets vultured. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code DuvalDaily to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. It must be 18 plus, 90 plus Alabama and Nebraska, 90 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona. Present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, that's 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY 467-369. So we kind of touched on, your top free agent wide receiver options. Looking at the draft, which again, I'm saying Tuesday, January 21st, draft's a few months off. Free agency's, less than 2 months away. Still don't know who the head coach is going to be. I think it's going to be Liam Cohen. I think the Jaguars should go receiver in the first round. And again, that's not just because of the value proposition of getting a receiver in the first round. It's because I think there's receivers there, potentially, that could absolutely create a mismatch for the Jaguars. Every time they step on the field against the opponent is like, how the hell am I going to stop Brian Thomas Jr. and Tedero McMillan? How in the hell am I going to stop Brian Thomas Jr. and Luther Burden? Probably no chance you get Travis Hunter, who I think is the best receiver in the class. But Luther Burden, Tedero McMillan, they are not bad consolation prizes. They are both top 10 players for me in this class. And they're very different, which is cool. I mean, I still don't feel comfortable picking between the two, but I do feel comfortable saying I would be happy to have either of them in Jacksonville. Tedero McMillan, 6'5", 215-pound, just monster receiver. And he doesn't play like the most physical brand of ball. He's a little more finesse, quick, fluid guy at his size. But what I love about his game, his hands are super strong. He always comes back to the football and helps his quarterback. He always attacks the football at its highest point. Contested catch rate, very high throughout his career. Drop rate, very low throughout his career. And again, he comes back to the football. Whether he is driving across the middle of the field, on a comeback route, heading towards the sideline, going upfield, like he does his very best to get to that football and to present a real target for his quarterback, which is awesome. He also has some, obviously unbelievable catch radius. He has some yak ability. Like he is a smooth, quick mover, twitchier than you would expect at his size. and he's looking to pick up extra yards. And so I think, pairing him up with Brian Thomas Jr., who's this unbelievable speed threat, 3-level threat. McMillan can be a 3-level threat as well. He does it a little bit differently. He does it more with size and length and just a lot of nuance at the receiver position. Luther Burden, on the other hand, not nearly as productive necessarily. I think he's been in a horrible offensive situation at Missouri for a while in terms of them understanding how to best utilize his skill set and make the most out of it. But I think Luther Burden has more potential than Tetairoa McMillan. I think he's going to be an insanely explosive tester. I think he's going to jump through the gym. I think he's going to run extremely fast. He is, just under 6 feet, but he has great length at that size. And he's like 205 pounds. He has really, really strong lower body that enables him to run through tackles, to, again, explode into the air to go get the football. And he is a really talented guy at the catch point. I think for whatever reason, that kind of gets glossed over and people just look at the stat line this year. He didn't get 1,000 yards, didn't have as much production. But Luther Burden goes up and gets the football with the best of them. I mean, he's got great hands. Pull up the stats on his hands, right? Like career drop rate over the last 2 seasons, about 4%. Contested catch rate, about 55%. And you would like to have seen a larger route tree. Different usage from him at Missouri. Guess who they were saying the same thing about that last year? He wears number 7. He plays in Jacksonville. Wears teal. Brian Thomas Jr. was a player that NFL draft analysts, including myself, were saying, can he not run the full route tree? Or does LSU simply just not use him in that way? The answer was the latter. I think the answer for Luther Burden III will also be the latter. He just turned 21 years old. I would honestly be banging the table for this pick. And now, you don't have to go wide receiver with your top pick. You could also just do it in the second round, and with your first pick, you could get, you could go offensive guard, although, again, that's not the best value proposition. Like the highest paid guard's only getting like $21 million a year, something like that. So you could do that. It would obviously help Trevor and help this run game potentially. You could go IDL. I don't think they're going to do that with Eric Armstead, Mason Smith, etc. And the top guy there is Mason Graham. I don't know that he's a Trent Baalke type of interior defensive lineman. I would be pounding the table for Luther Burden. But let's say you did go in a different direction in the first round. And again, that's assuming that Travis Hunter's off the board. Top of the second, I think you could be looking at Matthew Golden and Emeka Egbuka as probably the top 2 options. Both of whom I think can run the slot, play Z for you, play opposite Brian Thomas Jr. at an extremely high level. They're both guys that have high route variability. They're effective route runners. I think Golden is a little bit more explosive. Egbuka is a little bit more polished. They both have very strong hands. They both have body control, catch point ability, tracking ability down the field, the ability to adjust to the ball in the air, come down with it. They're both, like, neither of them is like, this hulking type of guy. I don't think either of them is necessarily, going to be running the 4.3s. Matthew Golden's about 6 feet, about 200 pounds. Emeka Egbuka is just a little bit taller than him. So I don't think either of them is, again, just this crazy athlete. I think Golden is more explosive. But I think they're both good athletes, very good athletes at the receiver position, and both technicians who have tremendous hands, and they would really complement this passing offense. You could also look at Jaden Higgins, Tez Johnson. I think I have second round grades on both of those guys. Two very different skill sets. I think Tez Johnson is pretty much a slot only. And he's very small, about 160 pounds. So there's some risk there, obviously. But Jaden Higgins is 6'4", 215. We've talked about him on the channel a lot. I think, again, for me, I would do this. Probably sign someone like Tevin Jenkins at guard, or I'd be, if you can go all in and go get Trey Smith, do that too. Sure. Absolutely. But both of those guys have some nastiness in the run game, but they're good pass protectors. Trey Smith is one of the ultimate run blockers at guard in the league. But sign a safety, Justin Reed in all likelihood, someone like that I think would be a really good play. Sign a corner. And then draft all those spots again. Right? After getting Luther Burden or Tedero McMillan. That's what I do. Feel pretty strongly about it right now. Could my thoughts change? Absolutely. Will free agency impact this? Probably. But that's how I would kind of play this out, sitting here Tuesday, January 21st, just having a fun little conversation. The Jaguars might not do this again because of the Gabe Davis signing, which is really unfortunate. But it is what it is. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. You can also check out genjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear, become a channel member here on YouTube. Y'all have a good one.